Hey guys, today is my birthday. The day that you're watching this. The day that I'm filming this obviously is not my birthday. But today is my birthday and I am turning 50. So it is a big milestone birthday. So I thought I would do a special kind of video. I put out onto my Instagram stories a prompt for you guys to ask me questions in regards to turning 50. And I did take a peek at what many of your questions were. And most of the questions were something like, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self, your 30-year-old self, your 40-year-old self? What advice would you give your younger self? So I would say that's the majority of the questions. Of course, there were some other questions kind of sprinkled in there, which I'll address first, and then we'll just get into kind of the advice, let's talk about life part of this video afterwards. So let me pull these up. Thank you guys, all of you guys, for actually writing in, for actually sending in some questions, because there's always that fear that you put out a prompt and like no one's gonna answer. So anyway, there's quite a few, really, wow. Let's do a handful and then we'll get into the advice part. Aw, Dr. Mona, she asked, are you going to add more doggies to the family? You know, I really want to. I think, it'd be nice for Butters to have someone to play with. But at the same time, Butters not that she doesn't care about other dogs. It always seems like she tolerates them. Like she's just fine with them. She doesn't really care, but she doesn't really play with other dogs. And I've gotten this report back from her daycare as well. She just wants to play Bali and she just wants to like climb up and sit in your lap. She's a real like human focused dog. And so I don't know what a second dog then would add except more joy. But I don't know that it would actually add to her quality of life. And I don't know if it would in turn, I don't know, make her anxious in a way or anything. And I just feel like right now we're good. Like we're really, really good. Obviously my husband and I adore Butters. We spoil her, we pamper her. She's like our only child. And I feel like it works for her. I think there are some dogs, like my previous dog, I think would have really benefited with having like another dog, like a playmate, another pack member. I just don't think it would benefit Butters. So while I have these fantasies and these dreams of having a house full of dogs, I just don't think Butters is actually the right dog for that. So maybe in the future, but not anytime soon. Oh my God, my friend Allison. This is great. She wrote, what does being a huntie mean to you? It means being a good friend. It means always being there for your sisters. So that's what being a huntie means to me. Oh, and I got a lot of just sending you birthday wishes and just want to say happy birthday. And oh, that's so nice. That's really, really nice. And then I actually got a couple of these questions, and this is very serious. This is very serious, and so I'm gonna try and approach this topic as sensitively as possible because I can be pretty blunt. But this particular question is: I'm struggling with the idea of having kids. What helped you definitively decide? For me, it's never had to be a decision. I've never wanted children. I've never had even the slightest inkling of like, maybe I want kids. Never. Even now, I see my friends with kids. I see my friends with amazing kids. Never, not once, do I have like this little, this little burning desire of like, oh, that's so nice. Never. So for me, it was never even a decision. And I guess I feel lucky in that way. I've never been tortured to have to make a decision. So I do feel very fortunate and very lucky in that way. I also feel very fortunate that I had parents that never pressured me. In fact, my mother was like, I'm so glad you have that choice. She's like, I mean, I never take this personally, but she's like, if I had that choice, I'm not sure that I would have had children. But she comes from a generation where it was expected. It was just what you did. You just never thought about it. And she was just so happy to be able to have a daughter in a time where I didn't have to feel like I had to. But I will say this, and of course, please take this with a grain of salt because this is coming from someone who doesn't have children. I just feel like if there's any doubt, I don't think this is something, motherhood, having children, I just don't think this is something you want to enter with any doubt. I think this is something you have to be like, this is what I want. I want to have children. I want to be a mother. That's the only piece of advice I can give to you is I just feel like, if you're in the position of privilege of having the choice of getting pregnant or not pregnant, I would think that it's something that you want to be 1000% sure of. That's just my thought. Again, coming from someone who doesn't have kids. Oh, this is such an this is a very interesting, like, one-off question. What's your favorite romantic movie? Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm not really into romantic movies. When it comes to movies, I'm like a 12-year-old boy. Like, I really like action movies. Maybe it's just because, I'm watching them with my husband or whatever, and so we can have like a really juicy conversation about like the Avengers or whatever. So I'm not really into romance movies. I'm also not a very like super romantic person, much to the chagrin of my husband. My husband is very romantic. I am not. But I will say I do love, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for this. I do love the Keira Knightley, I always say McFadden, but I think that's, I'm mispronouncing his last name, Matthew McFadden? Anyway, you guys know which Pride and Prejudice I'm talking about. I do really enjoy that movie. I love the music. I listen to that soundtrack all the time, and I really, really love just the setting. I just think it's so beautiful. I just love watching it because it's so beautiful. I don't know that I'm really actually into the whole like Mr. Darcy like thing. But yeah, I love that movie. I love watching that movie, and I would consider that a romantic movie. So there's my answer. Any special presents you want besides your Porsche, vroom vroom. So I did buy myself a Porsche, which is coming later this month. I've bored you guys with that story, and I'll vlog when I get that car when it finally gets delivered. I feel like I've been celebrating 50 or the road to turning 50 ever since I turned 49. And in fact, I have written a blog post all about this. So definitely subscribe to my newsletter, which is where I announce like a new blog post comes out. Definitely subscribe. I always have a link down below in my description box. It's just a quick little form at the bottom of my homepage on my blog. But yeah, I write a little bit about it in my newsletter, and I have a whole blog post talking about this road leading up to 50. So definitely check that out if you're interested, and definitely subscribe to my newsletter if you want to be informed of like new blog posts. But for the moment, in terms of any special presents like for that day, no, not really. I mean, I'm not a huge like present person. Presents are great, okay? I love gifts. I think that is my love language. But like on the day, I don't really care. I have 2 friends flying in. In fact, I have to hustle because I'm gonna have to pick one up at the airport soon. And there couldn't be a better present than having some very, very dear friends come to you on your birthday, come visit you. So I'm so excited for that. And that's better than any sort of like material gift I could ask for. Oh, what was the best purchase of your 40s? I would say my home. I would say my home was my best purchase. It's something I never dreamed I would have, spending most of my life in New York City. It was like the idea of having, I don't know, things like a pantry are luxurious. Things like having, a washer and dryer in your home, in your actual apartment, not your building, but in your actual apartment. That's something amazing. Having, a second bathroom. Like, those are the things that you kind of dream about when you live in New York. So a home like this is just something I never, ever thought that I would live in. And, I love it. I think I've talked about in a previous vlog about how being a homeowner is really a lot. It's like a part-time job, but it is also very, very gratifying. I love this home, and I love taking care of this home. I wish I just would, like a child, I wish it could just tell me sometimes what's wrong. But yeah, I would say this house is my best purchase of my 40s. Someone asked me, would I ever get a cat? No, because I'm allergic. That's why I don't have cats. If I was not allergic, I'd probably have one, because I do think they're very cute. Aw, a whole bunch of happy birthdays. Just turned 50, you're gonna love it. Oh, so nice. Any regrets? I have no regrets. None. And that's one of my life's mottos. I think I've been asked that question a lot. What are some sayings you love, or what's your motto, or whatever? And it is most definitely, don't do anything you're going to regret, and don't regret anything you've done. What was the best skincare product worth the long-term investment? Wow. I would have to say, and this is probably just because this is the only skincare product I have used for so long, and many of you have heard me say this, but it's creme de la mer. I started using La Mer because I had eczema. I mean, I still have eczema, I don't, it's not active, and I don't break out as often as I did when I was, in my teens, going into my 20s. And I wanted to stop using steroid creams. Those were the things that, were the only things that worked for my eczema breakouts. And eventually I just tried La Mer. It was one of those things I kept reading about in Vogue. It was like this magical cream. I remember I had to save up all of my pennies. In fact, I probably used up any sort of spending money I had left over from a paycheck to buy a jar of it. And it worked like a charm. I used basically only La Mer for probably, I don't know, close to 15 years, probably from like my mid-20s to when I was 40. I would just wash my face in the shower with whatever, soap I was using, and then I'd come out of the shower and just put creme de la mer on my face. And I think it really, really helped in terms of like wrinkle prevention and all of those things. I mean, I do think I am fairly lucky in terms of, genetics or whatever, but my skin is pretty smooth considering I used to smoke and sunbathe and all those sorts of things. So I can only attribute that to La Mer because I used it solely for so long. I still use it on occasion. I will still, like, if my skin feels really, really bothered, or if I've really gone off the rails and eaten very poorly and I feel like maybe my eczema is coming back a little bit, I'll use La Mer for sure, and I still have a ton of it in my drawer. It's definitely something will always be in my rotation. So yeah, I would say that is definitely one of my best skincare investments for sure. How have you started your career? Have you always been into fashion and makeup? I have always been into fashion. Makeup has been this sort of love-hate thing because of my eczema. I couldn't wear it for a very long time. Anything that I put on my face, I would, break out. It would be irritating. But fashion, I think my mother always she's like, this is one of my earliest memories of you. But I mean, like from elementary school, I would take anything, catalog, magazines, anything my mom got in the mail, and I would cut them out and I would put them all over my wall. I had like a whole corner of a room up onto the ceiling just full of outfits that I loved, colors that I loved, looks that I loved, models that I loved. I was just always really into fashion. And going into high school, I really loved, fine arts and drawing and illustrating, and that sort of stuff was always my thing. And I wanted to go to school for that, but my parents were like, no. They were not going to pay for it, and I was like, I don't know if I can pay for it. So yeah, so anyway, I've always been into fashion, and I ended up going to college for business. I was like, well, may as well do something practical. So I went to NYU for business, and then my plan was, as soon as I got out of NYU, I was just gonna get a job and start taking fashion design courses in the evening. So I started taking courses at Parsons, and I really liked so the two big ones I would say in New York are Parsons and FIT. You probably have heard of both. Parsons is very like art driven, and FIT is very technical driven. So FIT is great for if you want to learn how to sew, if you want to learn how to do like the marketing, if you want to learn how to like use like a knit machine, or like it's very, very technical. Where Parsons was great because I loved drawing. So like fashion illustration was really great. I loved doing a draping class at Parsons. It was just it was fun, and I really, really liked it. However, I was just taking like one class at a time, and I just couldn't gain any traction. So I kind of, I guess kind of gave up on it, or, practicality and reality sort of dawned on me that after like, I think I was taking one class in the evenings for like 3 or 4 years, and I just really wasn't getting anywhere. I had finished maybe a semester and a half of classes, in that time. And so I, just kind of focused on my career. I was in technology for a while. That's what paid the bills. And then I found knitting, and it was this really fun kind of escape for me. Every time I picked up my needles and would start knitting or something, it's very, very zen. Of course, that's after you learn. That's after you learn how to knit. The learning is a very steep curve and is very frustrating. And then I started designing, knitwear, and it was just such a funny kind of roundabout way of going about something I always wanted to do. And of course, writing knitwear patterns for knitters is a very far cry from working on like Fashion Avenue and, like big fashion business. But it was what I liked about it. It was, it was a nice creative outlet for me. And that's why I started doing that full time. And then it was great. YouTube was sort of the result of me having a yarn store in Wow, I'm like all over the place. When I think back on my like career path, it really is very zigzaggy. But I had opened up a yarn store for a little while. It was kind of like a pop-up store. I was only open on the weekends. It was in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. It was inside this Brooklyn Craft Co. where they had classes. It was just a really fun time. And so, it was always going to be kind of like a temporary thing. And so after about a year and a half, maybe two, I can't remember anymore, maybe like a year and a half, we'll say, close to 2 years, I decided to close up shop. I had done my time. I was working 7 days a week because that was only open on the weekends. And I really missed having a store. I really missed introducing people to new products. I think that was my absolute favorite thing about having a store. I liked kind of curating and finding yards that were, maybe a little off-center. Maybe the bigger stores didn't carry them. Maybe they were indie hand dyers, so it was like colors you had never seen. And I really, really loved when knitters would come in and oh, what's this? And they would take it home, and then I would see them the next week and then be like, this is great. Do you have any more of this? Like, wow, I'm so glad that you introduced me to this yarn. That was the most gratifying part of having that store. And so when I closed, I thought, oh, like, how can I continue to, kind of foster that type of community or continue to communicate in that way where I can show people new discoveries or whatever. And so I started my YouTube channel, and my first few videos are about knitting. And I was watching YouTube because of the beauty videos at that point. I just fell down this rabbit hole basically and started to buy makeup or whatever. But I was kind of trying to incorporate I was trying to incorporate some beauty type videos, like favorites and stuff, into the knitting world. And it was a little bit difficult because knitting is so slow. And, for me to do like hauls or whatever, it was kind of awkward. I felt like I was kind of forcing something. And so at that point I was like, you know what? I'm just going to talk about makeup and beauty, because at that point I had been watching so much YouTube. I had accumulated quite a bit of makeup and I was playing with it because, I always loved, drawing and painting and all that. And so I personally was really kind of falling in love with it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to switch my content over to beauty. And I did that when I moved from New York to Las Vegas. I was just able to film a little bit more consistently because I was able to rent a place here that had an extra room, and so I set that up, but I was still knitting, I was still designing full-time. And so, YouTube at that point was just like a little side thing, like my little hobby. It was just a lot of fun. And yeah, and then just after a few years, like the decision for me to make the move to YouTube full-time was kind of made for me. I mean, not to sound like I had no control in the situation, but basically the company that I was working for, the yarn company I was working for, as their design director, was bought by people I did not like and I did not want to work for. So I quit that job and I thought, well, I can continue designing, or I could just really go for the YouTube thing. And I thought, well, I guess I could do both. So I really went for the YouTube thing, and I kind of kept my eye out on design opportunities or whatever. But, here we are. YouTube basically monopolized my time, and I really love it. And I still love that idea of being able to introduce like new products to you. the entire concept of why I started my YouTube channel, and what I discovered about myself opening up that store, that, you know, like I just love introducing or showcasing things that I think you guys would really love. Like I just love that. I love doing that. And so I think YouTube has been the absolute best vehicle for me to do that. So anyway, wow. Did you think the answer was going to be that long when you asked? Oh my God, this is such a good question. What superpower would you like to have? Well, there's two. I can never decide between these two. One is to be invisible. I just think that would be so great to be able to like walk around and like listen to people's conversations, be that fly on the wall. I just think that would be so cool. So to be invisible. The other one is to be, for basically the same reasons, but to be a shapeshifter. So to just kind of to kind of like creep my way into things or whatever, or just kind of be unnoticed, I think just would be super duper cool. Really, really cool. So yeah, those are my two answers. Can you tell? I've actually given that a lot of thought. It's like, you know, when people sit around and think about like what they would do if they won the lotto, I sit around and think about what superpower I would want, and if I got it, like what I would do. So anyway, that I'm so glad someone asked that question because I think about it so often. Does getting older scare you? It does not scare me. I love the idea of getting older. And I know people throw around the you know, oh, it's a privilege to get older. It's like, yeah. I feel like there's a lot of lip service around getting older. You know, it's like we say things that I think people want to hear or that we think sound good or whatever. To truly, like really truly embrace aging, I think is a result of not having any regrets. Because if you have regrets, you know, the thought then is, oh, I want to go back in time and fix that. So to not have any regrets, but to also live life to the fullest. You know, that to me, the biggest regret I think someone can have is not doing something. I don't think a lot of the time, or most of the time, regrets are based around something that you did. I think it's based around things that you didn't do, opportunities that you let pass up. And I think if you keep your mind open for opportunities, and if you're like open to things and you give things a shot or whatever, I think that's a life well lived. And I think when that's the case, then there's really nothing scary about getting older, you know, because it's more of that. It's like, wow, like all the things that I've done, all the things I've accomplished, like there's just going to be more of that. And I just think that's very, very exciting. So I have no problem getting older. I have no problem, you know, looking older. I will say this, and I've talked about this before too, because of my health and fitness journey that I'm on. I don't like feeling older. I don't want to feel like I'm frail. I don't want to feel like my joints need like a good oil change, you know, like those sorts of things. But, you know, at the same time, you have to laugh at it. You know, every time my husband and I, you know, get up and we gotta, you know, like stretch out our back a little bit, we just laugh at ourselves because it's just funny. You know, you have to laugh at it. But no, I'm not scared of getting older or anything. I think it's very exciting. There really is some nice comments in here. Thank you so much for everyone that wrote in some beautiful comments. Thank you. It's very nice. It's very nice. When did you decide to embrace the gray? This is another question I've answered a lot. It's sort of like the kid thing. It wasn't an active decision where I was like, that's it. I'm just gonna let this gray grow in. It happened, you know, I've been going gray pretty slowly. And, you know, it's funny, I was looking back at some video that I did in maybe 2019 or 18, and like my hair's noticeably darker. I was like, oh wow. I had no idea. I just, you know, I don't like to say this often, but I'm gonna say it here. I just don't care. I could not care less about the color of my hair. And it is such a polarizing topic. This topic is for some reason, so inflammatory. The most violently ragey comments that I've gotten on YouTube have been about my gray hair. It is such an interesting study in sociology. What is it about gray hair? I really don't understand. I think if I may, I think a lot of it is, yes, it makes you look older. I think it just makes me look my age. I'm 50. When you're 50, I think having gray hair is appropriate, so fine. But I think what people get so offended at is that they think it makes you look poor, like you can't afford to color your hair. Because I've gotten some comments kind of leaning that way, which really surprised me. I just have never ever thought of it in that way. I was shocked. I was really shocked. So I think it's a mixture of that, is that to some people I look old and poor. But I just, like I said, I just couldn't care less. And for the amount of time it would take to keep up dyeing my hair, I cannot be bothered. It pains me to go get my nails done. It takes about an hour and a half every 2 weeks-ish to get my nails and my toes done. I love my nail tech. I love my nail salon. They're lovely ladies. I just don't like just sitting there getting my nails done. So the idea of having to do that with my hair on top of my nail, on top of everything else we have to do, I just don't. But it's just not something I've ever thought about. I've never dyed my hair. Never. I've never dyed my hair. So I just never thought about it. You know, once my gray started coming in, I was like, oh, I'm going gray. Okay. And that was that. I don't know. I just don't really think about it. Do you get Botox? I do not. I don't get Botox or fillers or anything. I don't like the idea of needles coming at my face. It's as simple as that. There's so many nice comments. Oh, I can't think of a question, so happy birthday. So nice. How to maintain long-term friendships. I have a lot of long-term friendships, and it takes effort. You got to remember to call, and it's easier now, you know, with texting and FaceTiming and Zooming and all that kind of stuff. But it takes effort, and there are certain things that I make sure that I do, like this past Labor Day, going to my friend Matthew's house and staying with him and staying until his birthday. Like, that's important to me, that I spend his birthday with him, or at least around the time. His birthday is always kind of around Labor Day. But that's important to me, to be able to do that and spend that time with him. So that's, you know, it's a priority for me. The friendships in my life are probably like way up there, top 3 priority. I love my friends. They are like my family, and they're the ones that have gotten me through tough times. They're the ones who created the Michelle you see before you. Yeah, they're the most important thing to me. So there's some of the most important people in my life, of course, are my friends. And this is something I can say now that I'm 50. You know, in your 20s, your teens, your 20s, there's a lot of competition with your friends. There's a lot of comparing against your friends, or, you know, people that you know. And I would say in your 30s, you kind of, in your 30s, I feel like you start to shake out a lot of extraneous people that maybe you've come across, and you stop with the competition, and you really start to like build each other up, and those are the ones that you definitely want to keep. Anyway, I say all that because you want to have friends that nurture you and aren't always comparing themselves to you or competing with you. Like, to me, that's not really a healthy kind of friendship. You just want people who are there for you, who are proud of you, who support you, who celebrate your highs, who, you know, hold your hand at, you know, during your lows or whatever, you know, not people who revel in any of that. And so I think a very, very integral part in maintaining long friendships is having friendships that are worth maintaining. And I feel so proud that I've been able to, you know, cultivate a beautiful circle of friends. It's one of the things I'm probably most proud of. It's so important to me. Oh, well, speaking of biggest source of pride in your life, well, I would say my relationship with my husband is probably number 1, and then number 2 would be my friendships. But yeah, my husband and I, we've been together since 1996, so that's 27 years this year. And, you know, it's funny, people are always talking about how hard relationships are and how much work they are. It's almost like a job. You know, when people tell you, like, oh, do what you love because then it's not going to feel like work. That's how I feel about my relationships. When you're with the right person and when you're aligned, in how you feel about things, your philosophy on certain things, your belief about certain things. It doesn't feel like work. I don't feel like my relationship with my husband has been hard in any way. You know, we approach things very logically. If we have a problem about something, we talk about it. If I'm proud of him, I'll let him know. Like, you know, we keep it uncomplicated. So, and I like to do that with my friends as well. So those are the two things that I'm most proud of. But I do want to get into, because I feel like I've been talking forever, I want to get into like the advice, what I would tell my younger self, that sort of thing. Because like I said, I got at least like 20, 30 of those questions. And, you know, the advice I would give anyone younger than me, and I wrote down 5. I had to write these down because I was like, oh my God, I don't know, advice. I'm just, be safe. Be safe. But one, to kind of go off of what I was just talking about, is I think the most important thing in life are your relationships, the ones that you cultivate, the ones that you maintain, the ones that you nurture. But relationships are they're just so important, from my husband, which is like the number one relationship in my life, down to the woman at Sprouts that always checks me out when I go. You know, seeing her, and hopefully when she sees me, it's like I put a smile on her face, she puts a smile on my face. My husband was actually just in New York, and he was telling me like, oh man, he misses like when you go to the same deli every single morning and you order the same breakfast, that like after a week or two, when you walk in, the short order cook turns around and he can see you and he knows exactly what to do. It's like, there's a relationship that we actually don't get here in Vegas very often, but there's that relationship. And they're like, hey, you know, they usually wish you good morning or whatever. And I'm like, even down to those relationships, it's just great. Like I remember living in Long Island City, and I would walk by the same deli who was owned by a very funny Pakistani family. They were just hysterical, and I would always wave hi to them or whatever. And then, you know, it's nice. Like relationships, I think, is what makes the world go round. So that's one piece of advice I would give anyone younger than me, is really cultivate the relationships in your life. Really be interested in the people around you, from the most important to the least important, because I feel like we're losing that a little bit, you know, with everything being online, and, you know, we text or whatever, or, you know, I don't even have these like face-to-face conversations even over FaceTime as much anymore, because I'm Marco Poloing people, which is just one person at a time. And I'm like, that's still a very kind of strange way of communicating. It's not how humans normally communicate. So when you can, like, just really nurture the relationships that you have in your life, and nurture them by being present and being there for them, and in person. You know, I just think that there's something really important about that, is like actually showing up in person. My other piece of advice is dream big. Absolutely. There's not anything in this entire world that you cannot do. So whatever it is that you want to do, you want to build a spaceship, you want to go into space, you want to have your own Netflix reality show, you want to help children, whatever it is you want to do it. There's absolutely no reason why you cannot. So that for sure. My third piece of advice kind of piggybacks off of that, is just believe in yourself. Know that you can do it, because you can. Trust me. You can. There's a lot of people out there with fill in the blank kind of handicap, and they can do it. They've done it. Maybe they have to push themselves a little bit harder. Maybe things don't come as easily to them, but you can still do it. And you have to believe in yourself. You cannot go through this life not believing in yourself. And sometimes it's not easy. And some days, there are days where you're not going to believe in yourself. But but in general, I would say, really, really make that a practice. Every time you start to doubt yourself, stop it. Stop it. Ask yourself, well, why are you doubting yourself? There's no reason. You can do it. You're a capable person. So believe in yourself. And also get to know yourself. So this is my fourth piece of advice. Get to know yourself, because the last thing you want is for society or your family or anyone outside of your own heart and soul defining what happiness is, what success is. You have to find out what those things are for yourself. And speaking of relationships, the relationship you have with yourself is paramount to everything else. And without having a very good, strong relationship with yourself, you really can't have a really good, strong relationship with anyone else. If you don't know yourself really well, and I know, people say this all the time, but I mean, think about it. If you don't know yourself, if you don't truly know what's going to make you happy, how are you going to communicate that to anyone else? How are you going to partner up with someone, and what are your expectations of this person? If you expect them to contribute to the joy in your life or the happiness in your life, and you don't know what makes you happy, that's something that doesn't work. Developing the relationship with yourself and getting to know yourself and what you want and what brings you joy and what you think defines success, that's the most important thing, I think. Absolutely. The last piece of advice I want to give anyone out there, and this is the most tangible, this is the most actionable piece of advice I can give, is stop using credit cards. Don't use them. Just don't use them. You're basically paying for money, and you've already paid for your money. You've paid for your money through income tax. You're paying for that money through sales tax, and now you're going to pay another someone for that money. So for every dollar that you're spending, there's 30% taxes, another 10% we'll say for sales tax, and then if you're using a really crappy credit card that's like 30% APR or something, you literally have like 15 cents per your dollar. Why would you do that? So stop using credit cards. And then I'm gonna end on this. So I was asked a lot, like, what's the advice that you would give, someone? And then what's the advice you would give yourself? If I could go back to my 30-year-old self, what is the piece of advice that I would give? And that would be to meditate. Meditation has been the biggest game changer in my life. It's something I started doing, maybe I started dabbling in it when I was about like 35, so about 15 years ago. So I didn't do it really steadily. I didn't really kind of understand even what I was doing. And so I didn't really do it for that long. But when I came to Las Vegas, I really started to meditate. And it's something my husband actually has done on and off his entire life, since he was in high school. And so I always saw him doing it, and I was like, okay, I should try it. And so I really started researching it and getting into it. And of course, YouTube was a big contributor of it because there's a lot of guided meditations on there. And this is what I'll say about meditation. If you want to bring about change in your life, you can absolutely do that without meditating, but it will probably take you a lot longer. Meditation will help shorten that timeline. It'll just help you get there faster because it brings about a lot of clarity. And that's why I meditate to kind of implement change in my life. I know obviously you can meditate for many reasons. A lot of people do it for serenity. A lot of people do it to combat anxiety. A lot of people do it to help them sleep. A lot of people do it to help them focus, like athletes do it before games, things like that. But I do it generally to implement change. And to get to know myself a little bit more. There's, if you kind of focus on something in your life that you want to change, you start to peel back a lot of layers, and it is very interesting. It's very interesting. So anyway, I'm going to end there. Thank you guys so much for all of your questions and prompts. Here we are, 50 years old. I love it. And don't forget to subscribe to my newsletter. Check out my blog post. That's going to go up tomorrow, I believe. I just have to finish it up. So that's going to go up tomorrow. Definitely check it out if you want to hear a little bit more about my road to 50, what I've been up to this past year. I pretty much have kept you abreast, but if you want a nice summary and the things that I've learned, check out the blog post. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in my next one.